Did you guys ever think about when the flavors are actually extracted during the brew process? Well, to create the perfect brew recipe, we actually have to understand how and when the flavors are extracted so we can find out how to extract the best flavors from the coffee. So about half a year ago, I actually did a video on how extraction works. It's the pour over discussions on extractions, I believe. There's actually gonna be a link up there. You can click that if you haven't already watched it. There will also be one in the description below, so make sure to watch that video. It kind of just roughly talks about when and how the flavors are extracted at what times. But today I kind of wanted to go a little bit more in depth and talk about the other extremities, because in that video, I used a lighter roast, and so the flavors were all extracted at the beginning. Now I want to show you guys what happens with a slightly darker roast and how we can actually maximize extraction for all kinds of coffee. So when it comes to actually creating a perfect brew recipe, I wanted to go on the journey with you guys to actually design and figure out how we're going to maximize flavor extractions. Now, if you haven't actually watched the other video, let me give you a quick recap. Most of the flavors were extracted in the first 45 seconds of the brew, maybe about a minute. You can clearly see that it was going from darker, and then all of a sudden, especially after the 1 minute 30 mark, all the colors of the liquids was really thin, completely transparent, and if you drank it, there wasn't much of a flavor. So I always wondered if that was even necessary for us to balance the coffee with. Now, that was done with a lighter roast. I thought maybe if there's a lot of acidity and flavors coming out at the beginning for a lighter roast, it might be different from a dark roast, because darker roasts don't have as much acidity. And so we're gonna be brewing with a darker roast and seeing how that translates and if the same theory actually applies to it. And by then, we can figure out when most of the flavors and how most of the flavors are extracted. Now, before we get into the video, if you are new here, my name is Vincent and I'm the head roaster for Tales Coffee. And if you love educational and experimental videos, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification so you can get the latest updates on my newest techniques. We're gonna jump straight into a demo, and I'm gonna show you guys with a darker roast. We're gonna have it on a stand, and I'm gonna have 3 clear glass cups. Now, last time I brewed them into these tiny mason jars. You guys have no idea how much mess I actually made and how many fingers I burned from that. So this time, we're not gonna make the same mistake. We're gonna be brewing the whole batch, but I'm gonna be switching the cup every 30 seconds with larger cups instead. And we're gonna see what the difference is and how it actually changes colors from every 30 seconds. And if a dark roast actually extracts in a similar way to the light roast. So let's get right over. So as always, I've preset my filter and I've got my grinds in here. We've got 20 grams of beans in here today. This is just kind of like my standard. 300 grams of water will be going in here. As you can see, there's gonna be 3 cups. It's not gonna be perfect, 100 grams each. We're just gonna do it by time. I'm roughly gonna give them about 45 seconds each before I switch them out, okay? Or maybe actually I'll just do 30 seconds. 30 seconds, 30 seconds, and then whatever left goes in the last cup. And that's because in the first video, in the pour over discussion video, anything past the minute kind of just really fell off. So we're gonna look for most of the best flavors in these 2 cups anyways. Now, I do want to go over, because I don't talk about this enough, but when I grind my beans, actually, I put 20 grams of beans in here. I put about 22 grams of beans in here. After grinding, I never tap my grinder. So a lot of the static particle gets stuck in there. And that stuff I find doesn't have a lot of flavor. And then at the same time, the force of it kind of puts it onto the rest of it. So I just run my fingers and I get rid of everything. And so I only have what I think is the best flavored sets of beans, okay? I will do a video on this and we'll talk about this another time. It'll be quick, but yeah, so I have very strong coffees because of that. Now, I've got it set up. We're gonna be pouring 300 grams of water in here. This is a dark roast. It actually has a little bit of oils, and this allows us to see when the flavors are really being extracted. So let's get right into it. Got my trusty chopstick, and we're gonna start. Now, with darker roasts, I always like to pour a little bit with a droplets here. Allows us to elongate our first drip, cause more agitation, and then as it fills up, we work our way out. Flush, and then back into the middle before we work our way back out. Now, guys, I made a mistake. I forgot I still have to pour all my coffee. So we're gonna go a little bit over the 30-second mark because I don't have enough hands. Okay, we're at 300 grams. We're gonna stir, put this aside, and we're just gonna quickly switch a cup. So we switched the cup at about 45 seconds. The next cup will be switched at about 1 minute and 15? Yeah, 1:15. We're just gonna assume that's how it's gonna be. But from here, I can already see that the first cup is significantly darker than the second cup. Okay, so we're done brewing the coffee. We're gonna set this aside, and I'm gonna sit back down and kind of just taste and talk about everything that just happened. 1, 2, and 3. So I didn't really think about this, but I'm not actually too sure how exactly I'm gonna show you guys. But I'm gonna do my best. We're gonna use this light on my phone, and you can see in the first cup, the color of the cup, it's quite dense, it's quite dark, and not too visible. So a lot of the oils, just like last time, have actually come out during this brew. When you smell it, you can just smell a difference. But let me show you guys all the coffees first. You can right off the bat see that even though there's less water, it's much more translucent, it's easier to see through, and that just shows that there's a lot less flavor being extracted in this part. Remember, this is about 30 seconds already, or sorry, this is 30 seconds after, and then we've got the final bit of coffee. So this is completely clear, it's super easy to see through, and yeah, let me just quickly do a quick taste test with you guys. I turn my phone off, so we're gonna start with the strongest one. Obviously, this is the first part of the brew. So, when I ran the test with a lighter roast and multiple smaller containers, most of the flavors were already here. Now, I'm gonna tell you this is a really decent cup of coffee already. It's quite tasty, a lot of sweetness. Of course, there's gonna be the bitterness that comes through just because this is purely a dark roast, but little did we know there's a little bit of acidity still in this coffee. Now, let me tell you a little bit about this. I actually took this so that it's just under second crack, so a little bit of the oils are coming out. It's not like ultra dark. It's nothing like a city roast or a French roast or a dark roast. It's a good dark roast, okay? But it still has a lot of the bitters that are coming out at the beginning, but there's still a lot of sweetness. Now, imagine this little bit of coffee, it's like a 1-to-6 ratio. I mean, we should probably weigh all this out. Jackie, can you grab me another cup? We're gonna weigh out exactly how much is in here. I took a very small sip. We've got ourselves about 100 grams in here. So the first 100 grams actually had a lot of flavor already. So I'm assuming maybe like 105, 110 grams before I sipped it. Now we're gonna get into this one. The burn flavors are still here. It's much lighter in texture. We don't have as much oils. You could see it earlier. Well, at least I could. I'm not sure how well the phone one is, but I'll be doing pictures on the Instagram account so we can actually see that a little bit better. But yeah, very clear already that this already carried a lot less flavor, which means I'm thinking that a lot less flavors is being extracted at this time. Now, let's wait and see exactly how much of this was here. So we're at about 175 grams of coffee right now, meaning we're closing in on like 180 grams, maybe 190 grams before I drank the coffee. So this is the last little bit. We're gonna be taste testing this. Now remember, 175 grams is already in here. This is the last bit of the coffee. We watched it all drain. Yeah, so there's not much flavor. There's still color in it, but I'm gonna tell you this, there's not a lot of flavor. I can't pick any particular notes in there. It leaves a kind of a dry finish on it, so I'm actually thinking that at the end, a lot of the drier flavors is coming out. Now this is actually consistent with the test I ran with a lighter roast. So that comes to show that most of the flavors are actually extracted at the beginning of the coffee, just like in the last video. But last video, I thought it was more to do with time. This time, I decided that it's more of a volume thing. So it comes down to how much water is necessary to extract all the coffees. Now at the end of this, I'm gonna just quickly weigh this. We've got about 50 grams left in here. So there was 225 grams. I assume I drank about 20 grams just now. So probably a 1 to 10 or a 1 to 11 ratio will have extracted all the best flavors in a coffee. And this is actually quite consistent with a lighter roast. So what does this experiment actually tell us? Now, as you guys could see, most of the flavors are still extracted at the beginning. And so this means that even in darker coffees, it doesn't matter what kind of flavor profile it is, it actually gets extracted relatively quickly. So most of the flavors, as we noticed, comes out in the first 45 to the minute mark. Now, the rest of the coffee, it's not like we're gonna throw it out because there's a lot of flavors that we can't actually taste because it's part of a balancing act. So now we just have to kind of find out where the balance is and where it stops. Towards the end though, I actually think there is a bit of coffee that we could throw out and not use potentially. So this is actually kind of interesting because I'm not sure if you guys noticed, but I hinted that I bought myself a new espresso machine. And the brewing theory and the extraction theory actually is very related to how it works on espresso as well. So for us, pour overs is a little bit more watery. That's why we have to think of it more as a volume play. How much water is necessary to extract all the good flavors? And for me, after running this test, I actually think that a 1 to 11 ratio allows me to pull all the best flavors out. It's also to do with time, but it's more to do with how we manage the brewing process during the short amount of time. Now with that being said, the ratio of 1 to 11 is just purely what I think is necessary for extracting all the good flavors. And it doesn't necessarily mean that that is our perfect cup of coffee. The problem with the 1 to 11 is it might be too strong in terms of flavor for us. It's kind of like, like a strong alcoholic beverage. It might be too strong and not always palatable. So what we do is we can add a little bit of water to it to balance that back out. Because what we're essentially doing is we're trying to brighten up and bring out only the best flavor profiles. Now this is actually something a lot of other brewing recipes or brewing methods actually use. The AeroPress is a great example. A lot of times people press really strong cups of coffee and then they balance it out by adding water to it. And even espressos. A lot of people love drinking a pure espresso shot, but not everybody appreciates it. It's really hard to actually taste out all the little profiles when you drink a pure espresso shot. So instead, what we do is we add water to it to kind of balance that back out. And the same theory applies to a pour over. The 1 to 11, in my opinion, will help me extract all the great flavors that I'm looking for. And this is actually regardless of roast type now, because I've ran the test with both the light roast and a dark roast, and it seems to remain constant that the 1 to 11 or maybe you could push it to a 1 to 12, but is fully extracting all the flavors. So with that being said, you just add water until you find it the flavor you enjoy the most. Having said all of this and having run the test, okay, that doesn't actually mean I told you guys how to extract the best flavors. Now we even have less water to work with than ever to fully extract our coffee. So make sure to check my other videos out. I actually did one on the pouring height and like how you can actually pour for different kinds of beans to fully extract your flavors. We only want to use a 1 to 11 ratio to fully extract it. We have shorter timer than ever and we have less water than ever. So our pouring technique matters even more when we're trying to use this idea to create ourselves the perfect brew recipe. As as always, thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you guys like the video, make sure to hit the thumbs up, like the video for us. It really helps us. Share it to your friends if you haven't already. And if you guys have any questions, please leave a comment. Let me know how this worked out for you. Did you guys run the experiment? If so, how does the 1 to 11 actually extract all the flavors for you? Do you like balancing it? For me, I actually think that this idea will let me further refine my technique and create an even stronger and sweeter cup of coffee, just purely because I'm only extracting what I think is the best flavors, and I brighten that up and shine that out by adding a little bit more water to it. Catch you guys in the next one. Have a great day. Bye.